Welcome to Family Law and More. I'm your host. I'm Nisha Katona, and I was a barrister for 20 years in Liverpool and a good friend of Lisa's, and went on to set up a business called Mowgli Street Food. And thankfully, we are now national with over 900 employees. But recently, Unit celebrated 1,000 days as a business, which is a proud moment. Set up on the 25th of July, 2020, in the midst of COVID, they have come from a team of 2 to a team of 30 in that short time. And they've got offices in Liverpool, Manchester, and another one soon to be opened in Leeds. And nearly 3,000 cases have been conducted during that time. So it seems a good time to catch up with the 2 directors of Unit, Lisa Edmonds, CEO and Senior Consultant Barrister, and Roger Draper, Executive Chairman. Welcome both.
Hi, Nisha.
Hi. Good to see you. So let's start with you, Lisa. What on earth were you doing setting up a new chambers 1,000 days ago?
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? I mean, you've been there and you're much further on than where we are at. But it all started during lockdown. I was in my bedroom. That's where the home office was set up. And we were having an extension at the time. And life was busy and chaotic. And yeah, we went from paper to business in about 6 weeks. And I don't know where your dream of Mowgli came from, but ours was as original as noting it down on the back of a fag packet. You know, we were sort of sat there thinking, what can we do better? What can we do different? Is this a good time to make it happen? I watched a TED Talk by Derek Rivers. I don't know, Nisha, whether you've ever watched it. It's called How to Start a Movement. It's cool. It's a short clip, but it connects to you and it's very visual. So at the time, the chambers that I was in, I was a bit disillusioned, and COVID certainly didn't help with all of that. And identifying that there were 3 things that I thought really needed to change and 3 things that I thought I could actually help improve upon. And those were poor governance, poor service, and poor value for money. So I decided, I suppose, being inspired by that little TED Talk, to start my own movement based on those principles of creating a new chambers with a healthier culture and a preferred reality of great governance, great service, and great value for money. So I can see you've said that you've not watched the TED Talk, so I would definitely recommend watching that clip and also recommend it to our listeners. But yeah, that's where it all started, back in COVID, at the desk in my bedroom on a sheet of paper that I've still got.
Yeah, it's so inspiring, that kind of courage. And what about you, Roger? How did you manage to get yourself involved in Unit, and what was your role and what is your role?
Well, Lisa's obviously one of the best family law barristers in the country, and she was busy in terms of her own practice. So she sort of tasked me with finding out a little bit about the competition, whether there was a niche in the market for new chambers, and also if we were going to set up the business, to go and find the right people to help us do that in a relatively short period of time. So I sort of went undercover and went around all the family law sets in the UK and did a bit of baselining and benchmarking. And that was fascinating because when you go undercover, you can ask simple questions. And what was really interesting for me across all the chambers that I sort of chatted to was, I was asking questions like, why do you do this? What do you think you could do better? And quite often the reply was, and I always call it the 7 most expensive words in business, which is, well, we've always done it this way. And it reminded me of where I started on my journey. I work in the business of sport 20 years ago, where sport was, often run, you go to the board meetings and it was pretty terrible, and, it wasn't very modern thinking and so on. So actually we saw a niche in the market, and we created a business model for a new chambers with some fresh and agile thinking. And we wanted to pioneer a new approach where, we were specialists in family law, but also we were sort of experts in business as well. And also we wanted to create a brand, which was quite unique as well. And with the help of our brand partners, we created Unit, because a family unit is key to life. Barristers want to be part of a unit, but they're also their own individual unit. They're self-employed people as well. And we went out, and it was actually brilliant because in, I think, 4 or 5 weeks, we found people who wanted to support us, O'Connors, who were our business advisors, had been talking for years about modernizing, the legal system. Opportunus, our brand partner, synergy with the tech support. We had advanced MLC with the sort of chambers management system. And we found Martin Griffiths, who was our sort of chambers compliance guru in terms of making sure all the policies and procedures. So, we went very quickly from a piece of paper, as Lisa said, sort of back of a beer mat, to business in 6 short weeks.
I think that's the thing that listeners will find most encouraging and most motivating, the fact that you can do that. So how did you go about doing that? Instead of just sitting and having the idea, there was that dynamism, which is extraordinary. So you say that paper to business in 6 weeks. How do you do that?
Well, I think there's a number of things that you've got to consider. The first thing is the rather boring stuff in terms of sort of the regulatory system and the BSB and the compliance and so on. So, using sort of some of the work I do with Boston Consulting Group, we used a model called the GORP model, which is governance, organization, resources and processes. And we mapped out, how we were going to set up in terms of, how we're going to govern ourselves, what's the organization going to look like, what are the resources we need, and what are the processes that we've got to put in place. So that was the boring bit that we had to do. Perhaps the more interesting stuff that I know Lisa and myself are really interested in, and I know you are too, is business culture. And obviously there's different types of business culture, and the legal system's very hierarchical. Right from the top, even judges, KCs, senior juniors, junior seniors, clerks, and so on. And we wanted to sort of turn that on its head a bit, that whilst we operate in a hierarchical system, we wanted to create a tribe culture, which is quite modern. A lot of tech firms, a lot of the startups have that sort of tribe culture, but it's not necessarily the way it's done in the legal system. So that was quite exciting, plugging in a different business culture with the nuts and bolts of how we operate chambers. And then we did the usual things. We were thinking, okay, what's our vision in 5 to 10 years? Where are we now? Where do we want to be? And what are the things we need to do to get there? And we put in the basic business principles of, we've got a 10-year plan, we've got a 5-year plan, we've got a 3-year plan. But then we drilled it down to 300-day plans, 100-day plans. These are the 10 things that we've got to do in the first 100 days. And we went from there. And I think if we blended those together, that's how we managed to do it in 6 short weeks.
Goodness me. I mean, there's so much forward thinking there, is that it did start with a few scribbles, you say, Lisa. And what would you say were the most important first scribbles that really launched units?
Yeah, well, we focused on 3, our vision, our mission, and I think probably what's most important to me in terms of what I do day in, day out in the courtroom is the client promise. That's what drives me and all the members on our team day in, day out. So we set that as our start point. That was our navigation. And our vision is to become the fastest growing family specialists in the UK. And I think just with your introduction, it's a bit of a confidence boost to actually hear someone else say it. It feels as though actually we're on our way to achieving that. Our mission is to always deliver the best possible results for our clients. And it's nice to know that we've very quickly become the go-to set in the Northwest, both for lay clients and professional clients. And I think we wanted our client promise to reflect a modern chambers, not losing touch or breaking that connection with the traditional aspects of the legal environment that we operate in, which clearly have a value and a place. But for us, the modern way of client engagement is about making your life easier, that we are fair in what we do, and we're personable, we're always approachable. Everything is grounded around good communication. And ultimately, we've got to be responsible and accountable for the decisions that we take and how we go about delivering that service. So as a team, those are all the things that we nurture day in, day out to make sure that we're delivering that high-end service on a day-to-day basis.
And those principles just sound so understandable and attractive. Roger, you spoke earlier about, great governance, great service, and great value for money. And those are bigger aims and bigger ambitions. What does that actually mean?
Well, I think what we wanted to do was be a bit of a disruptor brand in the sort of legal sort of framework. And the way we're set up, the competitive advantage we had being a sort of boutique specialist family law firm was that we were sort of speedboat rather than a super tanker, because a lot of other chambers are a sort of consortium of self-employed barristers with committees and decision-making processes. We're a limited company, which means we can be pretty agile, decision-making's quick. We always talk about fail-fast culture. The way we develop that tribe culture with, the way we communicate with our team, regular tune-ins, daily, weekly, our education workshops, and the support team is integral to that success. So one of the things we found, and it may be a bit controversial, this when we talked to a lot of the chambers in the benchmarking exercises, the barristers would often be slagging the clerks off and the clerks would be slagging the barristers off. So what we wanted to try and do is actually change that, clerking sort of way of doing things to say we've got a support team, and the support team is there for the barristers and it's there for our clients as well. So, from a governance point of view, I think the key words are, just being agile and being able to make decisions quickly and also learn from the mistakes that we make, and everyone makes mistakes and it's how you bounce back from that. In terms of service, in any business, it's about the customers, isn't it? It's about your colleagues and it's about your customers. But from our customers, our clients, things go wrong. There's diary clashes, there's people turn up in the wrong places and so on. And what you've got to do is actually, it's not about the mistakes you make, it's how you fix them. So what you do to make things right is the most important thing about sort of client or customer satisfaction. And what we've also do is we've, and I think COVID helped us with this, is we've really embraced technology in terms of sort of digitization, social media, and where it's going next in terms of AI and the way people do business and the way people interact with each other as well. So, our service is based around, having great people in our support team, but also having the tech backup to support them to do their job better. And in terms of great value for money, it's really interesting because the way a lot of chambers do their fees can be quite complex. And there's a lot of overheads with big chambers and so on. But, and some chambers have buy-ins, and it's a bit of a sort of myriad of different approaches. And we just wanted to have a really simple model, which is no buy-ins. It's just a simple 10%. And, that's the way we offer great value to money, not just to our barristers, but also to our clients as well.
Yeah. And Lisa, obviously Unit now is a big success, and so far things are going really well. But I know that in the early days there were a lot of doubters, a lot of people who said it would not work, that it wasn't sustainable, it's too radical, that you're a pupillage factory, all of these things that are leveled at you as a leader and someone who's completely the two of you together, self-motivated, self-propelled, building such a different format. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, I think if I'm being really honest and reflecting, maybe at times not very well, you and I go back a long way, and you'll know that in terms of my sort of personality, I like people to like me. And I think probably a lot of family lawyers would fall into that category. But Rod was really good and sort of helped me and educated me and kept sort of driving home one of his stock sayings, which was to find the 50% of people that hate you or certainly don't like you and keep them away from the 50% that are undecided. And actually that played out as good advice in those early months, because what we did was, unheard of, certainly on circuit, and coming in and trying to shake things up a little bit. Some people in this industry don't like change. So I suppose I was having to sort of brace myself for that a little bit. And I think at the time you don't really see yourself as being a leader. In the moment, you're so occupied in trying to do the right thing. And for me, and I'm sure like you, making sure that the people that are on your team, you put their needs before your own all of the time. it's unconditional. I think it's only now, like when we get to do great things like what we're doing with you 3 years on, and you have that ability to reflect and look at where you were and where you are now, that you can actually see that you've actually got some skills and strengths in leadership, even though I wouldn't have known it at the time. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's been a journey for sure.
The thing is, you were a barrister and I was often against you, and you were brilliant. And in that, you are standing there holding the court, you're leading your client, you're leading the judge down the routes you want him to or her to go down, so you were always a leader. It's just different in business. Are there any rules that you apply at all?
Yeah, for sure. In terms of the organisation within Chambers, and Rog mentioned before, the culture is really important. There are probably 4 rules that we're trying to implement and nurture. So first of all, be happy. So anytime anyone reaches out to come and join the team or is thinking about joining the team, and even all those that we've got on the team, I start and I end with be happy. You've got to be happy. So if you're not happy here, we will support you to find your happiness. And that's definitely one of the things I wanted to change in terms of a Chambers culture, because the way I describe it is sometimes it can become like a toxic relationship. You know that where you're at, it's not working for you, but you just don't know how to exit that. And I really wanted to make a shift in that outlook. So be happy. And it drives people crazy as well. People don't like it when people are happy. So the other one that comes from a TED Talks also is about converting their shit into your fuel. So the ability to turn a negative into a positive, to learn how to get your mindset into a place where a crisis becomes actually an energy enabler and you sort of make something good flow from it. So again, we really support the team, especially those on the front line in terms of the support team and doing all the diary management to sort of have that attitude and outlook. The one other thing we're doing behind the scenes is to join forces, especially on circuit and in terms of like the Northern Powerhouse. So don't compete, don't sort of go toe to toe with people that are your neighbours. Put your arm around them, work together, share information, all boats rise, that mentality. So really trying to push that forward. And finally, always try and adopt a growth mindset, super important, as opposed to a fixed mindset. So a bit like what Rog was saying before, we've always done it this way. Those aren't words that, we want to hear. They're certainly not words that we encourage. We have a fail fast culture. Just do it and give it a go and let's see what happens.
And has it worked? What's worked for you? How could you have made it better? Would you do it the same way all over again?
Yeah. So working backwards, absolutely. I'd do it all over again. It's a roller coaster of a journey. It's not that every day is a good day. I always say to have a good day, you've got to have a bad day. But that sense of reward and making progress is so important. So absolutely would do it all over again. In terms of, when I reflect, what can I do better? I'm a big believer that communication and relationships is at the heart of everything and anything we do as human beings. And I think at times, maybe as I'm learning to grow into this new role and this opportunity that life has given me about improving communication, and being able to understand other people's views, especially when you're coming into an established environment and you're wanting to make change, not sort of thinking that that's going to happen overnight and having to respect that there's a process and actually change may happen beyond, my timescales, but knowing that you've started that movement, going back to what I was saying earlier. And I think in terms of what's gone well in relation to creating this new modern Chambers with an exciting vibe and a positive culture, it's definitely been about getting the right people and the right fit of people and nurturing those relationships both internally and externally. And, that's something I'm really proud of.
And what does the future hold then for UNIT? What are your plans?
Yeah, so the future, I think, is really exciting. We're growing at pace, and I think it's important to consolidate all the changes, but also not just to sit back and think, okay, job done. So technology is a really big player, I think, in terms of the progress we can make within the legal industry, as well as diversifying what we as a family specialist set offer in relation to services to our clients. So moving into court of protection work, looking at what a modern family is all about, which is a really topical conversation. And we want to get ahead of the curve there and be able to support clients that are transitioning through any legal difficulties when it comes to modern families. And also looking at ADR, so alternative dispute resolution models, because we get a lot of guidance now from the top down that going to court isn't always the best outcome for children in particular. So just looking to grow those areas, I think, is really exciting for UNIT.
So much white space. Roger, you've been involved in the business of sport for over 30 years, which is where we speak of winners and losers, a different concept in law. But, what is it that makes a winner? Why do winners win? What are the similarities in the world that you came from in terms of succeeding in this business, in the business that you've now embarked upon?
Well, when I first became involved in the business of sport, it was interesting because I'd always say it was our journey from sort of village fate to FTSE 250, because sport was pretty amateurish. It wasn't well run. The governance wasn't in place. And I was very lucky because I had some fantastic non-executive directors from business who I learned from, people like David Ross, who started Carphone Warehouse, Val Gooding, who was chief executive Bupa, Richard Baker, who'd been chief executive for Boots, Peter Littlewood, who's at Mars. So I had some fantastic learning from business. But what very quickly happened actually is people are passionate and interested in sport. So we actually, when we started winning back, the Rugby World Cup in 2003 was probably the start of that. And then obviously we had Olympic success in 2012, and we went from sort of 20 in the medals table to sort of top 2 or 3. And a lot of business leaders were then saying to us, can you come and talk to us about the principles in sport and how we can apply those to business as well, whether that be teamwork, resilience, focus, and so on. But I would say I've been fortunate to work with some of the best coaches in the world and some of the best leaders in the world in sport who've achieved amazing things. And I would say there are 5 things that are probably similar with business, but are principles that they have applied to win. And the first one is always high in vision and simplicity. I mean, we always used to quote the sort of JFK, we want to put a man on the moon. It's a very simple vision, and we're going to do it by the end of the decade. Disney, we're going to make people happy. Amazon, we're going to be the most customer-centric business. So, always the vision is very simple. It's we're going to be number 1 in the world, or we're going to win the World Cup, or we're going to do this. And then there's a timeline with it. So that's the number 1 thing. It's really simple and it's really easy. And everything you do as a leader is driven from that vision. I think the second thing is just an unrelenting focus. Everything you do, every minute, every hour, every day, every week as a leader has got to be unrelenting around that vision and mission. I talk to a lot of businesses and speak to their CEOs and chairmen. They say, well, our people just don't get it. I stood up at the AGM and we did this, or I did that. And you say, well, actually, once a year is not the way you do it. You've got to have that unrelenting focus in terms of the way you do business. I think the third thing is all the good winners seize the opportunity. So when they've got an opportunity, whether it's in a World Cup final or, the person I admire the most in sport is Sir Steve Redgrave, because on one day every 4 years, that was his one chance of winning a gold medal. And he did it 5 times during that period. And he trained for 4 years for that one day. And he seized the opportunity, and it was you either win or you lose. And he didn't, and he won 5 gold medals, which was amazing. And the same with business people as well. I think the fourth thing is amazing excel in planning. Everything we talked earlier about 100-day plans, 300-day plans, 3-year plans, 5 years. You've got to excel in plan, but you've also got to ask your question. I met an amazing coach who used to have did it happen days with his team every month. So they'd say and what have you, but every month he'd go, okay, Nisha, Lisa, you said this, did it happen? And that made people focus on what they were doing and their KPIs and the business. And the fifth thing is about world-class execution. And the story I was telling, that 2003 World Cup final, Johnny Wilkinson hit the winning drop kick. And what was interesting is it wasn't a fluke. It was actually, he was practicing that drop kick and executing it under pressure time and time again. So when he did it in front of 80,000 crazy Australians, it was straightforward because he just practiced it and drilled it and so on. So those are the 5 things: high in vision, unrelenting focus, seize the opportunity, excel in planning, but always ask the question, did it happen? And then world-class execution as well. So those would be my 5 top tips. But Nisha, we're going to turn the tables a little bit on you because you thought you were coming in being the host here, but we thought we couldn't let you go without just putting you on the spot a little bit. So I've got 4 quick questions for you. So number 1, give us 3 things you've learned setting up Mowgli.
Goodness me. Setting up Mowgli, honestly, I think you've got it. What I realized is that, it's one thing to peddle curry, but it's a better thing to have a compassionate clarity of purpose. So when I built my first Mowgli, I built it so that part of the profits went to Clatterbridge Cancer Charity. And now we've given over 1.7 million to charities. And that's actually what gets me out of bed every day. The cooking is easy for me. I can do that in my sleep. But, that having a compassionate clarity of purpose when you're starting out in a business really, really helps. That's one of the things that I've learned. The second thing I've learned, and I think I've learned this through life, basically, there's no such thing as failure. The right doors open, the wrong doors close. Every time I go for a building or I go to hire a certain person or whatever, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen for the right reason. It's because there's a right thing. And it really helps, I think, just raising children as well, for them to know that if something doesn't happen, it's because there's a better thing. As long as you work hard and your heart is in the right place, the right things happen. So that's 2, but there's quite a bit in there. I think to an extent, and it's almost like your moment you described, Lisa, when you started this and you thought, I could do this different. I could do this better. Is go with your gut, and you did, and go. You got it. You wrote it out, and in 6 weeks you've done it. That's just what you need to do. Listen to your gut and go with it. It is my view.
Okay, second question. It sort of combines your role as CEO, but also executive and development chef as well. So it's probably the wrong question. But what would you say, the secret sauce is to Mowgli's success?
No, that's weird. Well, do you know what the truth is? It's addictive food. You're only as good as the widget that we sell is food. And if that food is not addictive, good for you, complete, it's got to haunt you. And if it doesn't, then we don't deserve a place on the high street. It might be that people go off our food and there's a new, wave of food that comes. And then it's right that I go into retirement and I've got geraniums to plant. But honestly, I think it's that addictive food. Is it that something that people want to come back for? Do they need it? What you're supplying? It's like you with unit. Do they need it?
Yeah.
And of course they do. So far, they do.
Okay. Colleagues or customers?
Now, what does that mean? What does that even mean?
What's more important?
Oh my gosh. The reason I exist, the reason Mowgli exists, our mantra, our mission in life is to enrich the lives of people in the cities that we go to, starting with our colleagues. You've got happy servers, you've got good service, you've got happy chefs, you've got delicious food. Colleagues. They are my hands, they are my face. Do you know what I mean? I get that your energy goes. So 100%. Those are my children. I feel like I've got 900 children. Darn right, it's my colleagues.
Wow.
Then it's the customers, nephews and nieces and daughters and sons that want to come and work for us, and I look after them for you. So
And just bringing it back to where you started, what do you miss most about being a barrister?
Apart from me.
But I'm not, I really, at least I remember, that long case we did in Warrington. Honestly, the people, they were like siblings. They are like my siblings. And, we are shoulder to shoulder, a real camaraderie. The court ushers, the clerks, most of the judges, there were a couple of psychopaths. Can I make it clear? People, it's the Lisas of the world. You know what I mean? You felt like you were there with your sisters. It was just heavenly. So it's so nice to see you both here. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have you back anytime.
I wouldn't be good enough now. At least I couldn't string a sentence together.
That's not true. Nisha, thank you so much. Before we let you go, we always ask our guests that join us on our podcast to play our game of Roll That Dice. Are you up for it?
Oh my Lord. Is that like spin the bottle? Because I'm
Yeah,
not.
exactly. Here we go. We have career highlight.
Career highlights for me has got to be the MBE.
Oh,
You know, that was an extraordinary moment. And I wasn't sure why I got it. And I remember when I stand up and go to the front, they say, you know, for services to the food industry. And I hadn't been doing it very long. But that was a real pat on the back of the fact that it happened while I still had it sounds crazy. I'm 60 years of age, but it happened when I still had my mum. That's extraordinary.
Oh.
So I'm very grateful. I can retire kind of. Yeah.
I know that would have been very special.
Yeah. That was a lovely, lovely moment. I'm very grateful for that.
Well, Nisha, thank you so much for being our host on this very special podcast episode for Family Law and More at Unit Chambers. We wish Mowgli every success moving forward and hopefully see you maybe at our 5th birthday party.
That would be incredible. It's been honestly a pleasure to spend time with you. I love seeing your faces, love hearing your stories. Roger, those tales that you have about sportsmanship, I can just listen to them all day. Fascinating, and Lise, lots of love. Thank you so much, both of you, and all the best to Unit, and congratulations.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Bye, Nisha.
Love, see you later.